My name's Evan. I wasn't supposed to be here telling this. It was just supposed to be a joke. A throwaway moment my friends and I would laugh about and forget. But things have a way of stretching further than you ever think they will, especially when you're young, restless, and too easily swayed by the dumb confidence of the people around you. That July weekend, we were in Myrtle Beach. The air was thick with salt and sunscreen, and the whole shoreline pulsed with noise. Kids screaming in the surf, jet skis whining far out, music blasting from speakers jammed into coolers. The sand was packed with people, so tight you had to weave just to find a space to drop a towel. Seagulls swooped low, bold enough to steal food straight from open bags. It was chaos, but the kind that made you feel alive. I'd come down with 4 of my oldest friends from Charlotte. We'd pooled money for a small Airbnb and promised ourselves 2 days of pure summer. Cheap beer, late nights, girls, and whatever trouble found us. It was the kind of plan we'd made every summer, but rarely followed through on. This time, though, we had the ocean in front of us and the heat already baking our shoulders. Nothing felt serious. We set up near a row of volleyball nets, close enough to the water to cool off, but far enough to keep our stuff dry. The sand was scalding underfoot, burning through my flip-flops. We tossed a ball back and forth, pretending it was a game, mostly laughing when someone missed a serve or tripped over their own feet. Chris, loud, always scheming, was shirtless, his chest already blotchy red from the sun. He slammed the ball into the sand and turned toward me. "Evan, you gonna play or just stand there acting pretty?" I flipped him off, grinning, and reached for a sandwich from the cooler. It was soggy, but I didn't care. Everything about the day felt easy. The horizon stretched wide and blue. Girls in bikinis walked by in pairs, and my friends were half drunk on the feeling of being young and untouchable. That's when Chris leaned in with that look he always got when he was about to say something stupid. "Hey," he said, lowering his voice like he was sharing some ancient secret. "You guys ever hear about the shower house legend?" We groaned immediately. Chris's legends were never legends. They were excuses to do dumb shit. "What now?" I asked, biting into the sandwich. He pointed toward the wooden changing stalls near the boardwalk. "They say if you stand in the right spot by the women's side, you can hear things. Private things. But you gotta blend in. Act like you belong." The others were already laughing, nudging each other. I shook my head. "You're full of it, man." But Chris wasn't done. His grin widened. "Nah, listen. Here's the plan. One of us pretends to be blind, glasses, stick, the whole deal. You stand nearby looking harmless, and boom, nobody suspects a thing. We'll film it, send it to the group chat. Easy win." The guys howled with laughter. Mark muttered, "Messed up," but couldn't hide his smirk. Chris's eyes landed on me. Of course they did. I was the one who always said no, but ended up doing it anyway. "Come on, Evan," he said, tossing me a pair of cheap black shades. "You've got that face. All innocent. Who's gonna question you?" I hesitated, the shades dangling from my hand. Pretending to be blind near the women's changing stalls, that was the kind of thing that could get me thrown out or worse. But the guys were egging me on, and the sun was high, and I was 21 with more pride than sense. "Fine," I said finally. "But if I get hauled off, you idiots are bailing me out." They erupted like I'd just won them a championship. I told myself it'd be 5 minutes. 10 max. Then we'd go back to volleyball. Harmless. Chris found me a stick near the trash cans, smoothed from the tide. "Your cane," he said, laughing so hard he almost dropped his phone. I slid on the sunglasses, dark enough to hide my eyes but still see through. Mark tied a cloth band around my wrist, muttering something about selling the look. We practiced in the sand, me shuffling, tapping the stick, stumbling like I couldn't see. Chris coached me through it like some director, phone camera rolling. Slower. Look lost, not wasted. The guys were doubled over, wheezing with laughter. It was a stupid game. A skit for nobody but ourselves. That's when I noticed her. A woman jogging along the shoreline, maybe late 30s. Strong, athletic, hair tied back tight. Even from a distance, she carried herself like she owned every step, scanning the beach like nothing could slip past her. I thought nothing of it at first. Just another runner out enjoying the heat. But something about her stride, the way she moved without hesitation, it stuck with me. I shook it off, adjusted my shades, and turned back to my friends. "All right, let's get this over with." They cheered. I split off from the group, stick in hand, heart racing faster than I'd admit. The wooden changing stalls stood ahead, weathered and peeling. Kids ran past me with dripping popsicles, a guy strummed a guitar under a palm tree, and the surf crashed steady in the distance. I tapped the stick on the sand, forcing myself into the roll. Slow, cautious steps. Sunglasses angled just right. I could see fine, but I tried to look like I couldn't. Then it happened. My foot caught on someone's bag. I stumbled, catching myself with an awkward flail. Sorry, I muttered, staying in character. And that's when I heard it. A woman's voice, calm but firm, right behind me. "You okay?" I turned and froze. It was her. The jogger. Up close, she was sharper than I realized, sun-bronzed skin, piercing eyes, towel slung over one shoulder. She wasn't just fit. She had presence. She picked up the towel I'd knocked into, brushed it off without a word, and looked straight at me. My heart slammed in my chest. Stick in hand. Shades on. My dumb act suddenly felt like the worst decision of my life. She stood there, towel draped across her shoulder, eyes cutting straight through my sunglasses. The kind of eyes that made you feel like every excuse you'd ever tried to use in your life wouldn't hold for more than a second. "You okay?" she asked again, slower this time. Her voice wasn't warm, but it wasn't unkind either. Just steady. Certain. "Yeah," I mumbled, forcing my voice softer, fumbling with the stick against the sand like I was still in character. "Just lost my bearings." She tilted her head, studying me. Up close, I could see the faint lines around her eyes from years of sun and salt air. She looked strong, built from miles of running and a life of not waiting for anyone to catch up. She didn't buy my act. I knew it already. "How long?" she asked casually, like she was asking what time it was. My throat tightened. "How long what?" She gave me the smallest of smiles, sharp, knowing. "How long have you been blind?" I froze. The kind of freeze where your brain scrambles, so fast you almost forget how to breathe. "A while," I stammered. My voice cracked just enough to sound nervous, which, to be fair, wasn't acting. Her eyes narrowed, not with suspicion but with interest. "Must be tough. Though." She let the word linger, her gaze sliding down to my grip on the stick. "You seem to get around pretty well." I forced a laugh. "Practice, I guess." But my hands were clammy. Every word out of her mouth felt like a test, and I was failing already. She didn't walk away. Instead, she shifted her towel higher on her shoulder and nodded toward the changing stalls. "Mind if I walk with you?" It wasn't really a question. Sure," I said, my chest tight. My friends were somewhere behind me, probably hiding laughter behind their hands, phones aimed at us like vultures. I tapped the stick again, shuffling forward, the act feeling heavier with every step. We moved side by side through the sand. Families lugged coolers past, kids dragged neon shovels, and someone's speaker blasted reggaeton way too loud. I sidestepped a beach chair without thinking. Too smooth. Too natural. And she noticed. I could feel her watching me, every shift of her gaze like a spotlight. Then, just as casually as if she was stretching after a run, she dropped her water bottle in front of me. It rolled across the sand, stopping right at my foot. Instinct took over. I stepped clean over it. Not even a hesitation. The second my heel hit the sand on the other side, I knew. My stomach dropped. And then she laughed. Not a soft laugh. Not a kind one. A sharp, triumphant sound. Like she'd been waiting for me to slip, and I had given her exactly what she wanted. I tapped the stick harder against the ground, trying to cover it up. "Heard it roll," I said quickly. My voice cracked again. "Uh-huh." Her tone was light, but her eyes burned with amusement. Then she stepped in front of me, blocking my path. Arms crossed. Sand clinging to her calves. "Hold up," she said. The whole beach seemed to go quiet around us, though I knew it hadn't. The waves still crashed. Kids still screamed. Someone somewhere still played guitar. But for me, there was only her. "What exactly are you doing?" I swallowed, my tongue sticking to the roof of my mouth. "Just walking," I said weakly. Her smile twisted, thin and sharp. "Walking. Right. Near the women's stalls. With a stick. And shades. That's your story." My grip tightened on the driftwood. Yeah. Just getting some air. Exploring. Exploring." She repeated the word slowly, as if tasting it, letting it hang between us like a dare. I shifted my weight. Sweat dripped down my back. The act, the prank, all of it felt paper thin. She wasn't buying a single piece of it. "You're good at dodging stuff for someone who can't see," she said finally, her tone almost playful. "Coolers. Chairs. Bottles. Even girls in red bikinis." My face burned under the sunglasses. She'd caught everything. Every slip. Every twitch. I tried for a laugh, but it came out shaky. "Just good ears, I guess." She didn't even blink. "Try again." The stick felt like an anchor now, heavy and useless. I wanted to run back to my friends, rip off the glasses, toss the stupid cane, and laugh it off. But something in her voice kept me there. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't calling for security. She was just holding me steady in place with her eyes, waiting for me to admit what we both knew. Her smile widened. Not kind. Not cruel. Just sharp enough to cut. "So what's the game, Evan?" she asked, her voice low now. "You and your buddies filming from the nets? TikTok stunt? Or just bored and dumb?" Her glance flicked toward the volleyball courts. My stomach sank. She'd seen them. She'd seen everything. I opened my mouth to scramble for another excuse. To deny, to laugh, to play it off. But she cut me off, her tone slicing through whatever defense I had left. "You think I'm gonna believe you're just wandering?" I stood there with the whole beach spinning around me, stick in hand, caught like the world's worst actor mid-scene. And for the first time that day, I realized the joke wasn't funny anymore. Her eyes locked onto mine, or where mine should have been behind the sunglasses. The half-smile she wore wasn't the kind that gave you comfort. It was the kind that told you she already knew the ending to your story and was just waiting for you to catch up. If I called security right now, she said, her voice steady, calm, almost casual, how would you explain this? She gestured at the stick in my hand, the shades on my face, the whole pathetic getup. The act, the timing, the spot you just happened to pick. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. My head buzzed blank. My throat was dry. The ocean breeze hit my skin, but I was sweating like it was 100 degrees hotter. I wouldn't know what to say, I admitted finally. The words tumbled out quieter than I meant, but they were the only honest thing I could give her. Her eyes narrowed just a little, the smirk tugging again at her lips. Let me help you then, she said. You dodged that chair without missing a step. Stepped over my bottle like you had GPS in your shoes. Oh, and when that brunette walked past in the green bikini, you turned your head. Just enough. She tilted her own head, mocking me. Pretty impressive for a blind man. I could feel my face burn under the sunglasses. My friends were probably doubled over by the nets, watching my humiliation unfold through Chris's camera lens. But I couldn't look at them. I couldn't look anywhere but at her. I tried to laugh, a weak, broken sound. Look, it's not what you think. It's just a prank. Dumb bet with my friends. We thought it'd be funny, that's all. Funny, she repeated, her voice flat, pretending to be blind at the women's stalls. That's your idea of fun. When she said it like that, I wanted to melt into the sand. I shrugged helplessly, my grip tightening on the driftwood stick. Okay, yeah, it's dumb. Really dumb. But I'm not some creep. Just an idiot. Her expression shifted just slightly, something flickering behind her eyes. She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell the faint coconut of her sunscreen. So why keep it up? She asked softly, voice dipping low enough that I almost had to lean in. You could have run off. Tossed the act. But here you are, still standing. Still lying. My chest tightened. The truth was simple. I didn't know why I was still there. I could have bolted 10 minutes ago. But something about her sharpness, her certainty, the way she didn't yell, didn't judge, just held me in place, kept me rooted. I swallowed, fumbling for words. I just wanted to see what it was like. You know, to not see. The second it left my mouth, I hated it. It was a pathetic, flimsy excuse, the worst lie I'd ever told. Her laugh came quick, sharp, slicing through the noise of the beach. What it's like to not see, she said, shaking her head. No, what you're feeling right now. She leaned in, her eyes pinning me. That's what it's like to get caught. Despite everything, the sweat, the humiliation, the collapse of the whole stupid prank, I laughed too. A real laugh, short and broken. Because she was right. Because she was faster than me. Because she wasn't wrong about any of it. Okay, fine, I said, hands up in surrender, the stick dangling uselessly. You got me. Dumb prank, dumb bet. My friends thought it'd be funny. That's it. That's the whole story. She glanced over at the volleyball nets, where my friends were trying and failing to look innocent. Her smile curved again, slow and sharp. Yeah, she said. I figured. I shifted on my feet, feeling smaller by the second. Look, I'm sorry. Really. Won't happen again. Her gaze lingered on me for a long moment, then softened in a way I didn't expect. Not forgiving, not pitying, something else. Something like curiosity. I'm not calling security, she said finally. Not yet. The yet hung heavy in the air. My pulse thudded in my ears. But, she added, her smile curling into something that looked almost like a challenge, if you're going to keep this little show going, you're going to have to do a lot better than that. I blinked. What do you mean? She turned, adjusted her towel, and started walking toward the boardwalk. Come with me, she said over her shoulder. Let's see how long you can keep it up. Her ponytail swayed with each confident step. She didn't look back to see if I'd follow. And for some reason, every dumb instinct screaming at me to bail, I did. I trailed behind her, driftwood stick tapping the sand like it meant something, the shades slipping down my nose. Every step I took felt like a decision I couldn't undo. The beach was still alive around us, kids running in and out of the waves, couples taking selfies against the sunset, a guy balancing on a slackline strung between two palms, but it all blurred. All I saw was her. She didn't slow down. Her stride was long, steady, like she had somewhere to be. The towel swung on her shoulder, her ponytail bobbing with each step. I could have stopped, could have ripped the shades off and stormed back to my friends, laughed it all off, and chalked it up as a failed prank. But I didn't. I couldn't. Something about the way she'd turned the tables made me want to see where this went. She wove through the crowd toward the boardwalk. Vendors hawked sunglasses and knockoff jewelry. The smell of fried dough and grilled shrimp filled the air. A steel drum band played near the pier, their music floating above the chatter of tourists. She stopped suddenly at a lemonade stand, leaving me planted in the sand, stick in hand, like some forgotten prop. Hey, she said brightly to the woman behind the counter, her voice casual, easy, like she hadn't just dismantled me 10 minutes ago. I shuffled my feet, tapping the stick, keeping the act alive. A couple of kids ran past me, nearly colliding with my legs. Instinct kicked in, and I sidestepped smoothly. Too smoothly. When I looked back, she was watching me, cup in hand, a straw between her lips. That same knowing smirk tugged at her mouth. "You hear that?" she asked, nodding toward the pier. "Sounds like reggae." I froze. There was music, faint but clear, a Bob Marley riff floating from a speaker by the carousel. My pulse spiked. Was she testing me? Of course she was. I tilted my head, acting like I was straining to listen. "Yeah," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "Sounds like it." Her brow lifted. "You hear a lot for someone who doesn't see." She took another sip, eyes glinting. "Like that girl in the yellow sundress who just passed by. You heard her too, right?" I swallowed, throat dry. The truth was worse than the trap. I had turned my head when the girl laughed. Reflex. I hadn't even thought about it. Yeah," I muttered. She was loud. Her lips curved. Not into a laugh. Into something sharper. She didn't call me out. Not directly. She just started walking again, weaving through the crowd, sandals flicking sand with each step. I followed, stick tapping, sunglasses sliding. She stopped again near a tall guy in a red lifeguard shirt, whistle shining against his chest. "Hey Marcus," she said, her tone warm, familiar. The lifeguard smiled. "Long run today?" "Always," she replied, then turned slightly toward me. "This is my friend." She let the pause hang just long enough to make my stomach drop. "What's your name again?" "Evan," I said quickly, my voice steadier than I felt. Marcus gave me a nod, his eyes flicking to the stick, the shades. "Nice to meet you, man." "You too," I muttered, my grip tightening on the driftwood. The woman turned back to Marcus, her smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Evan's got selective vision," she said smoothly. "Sees what matters." Marcus chuckled, oblivious. "That's a talent." But her eyes never left mine. I forced a weak laugh, tapping the stick against the boards, but the weight of her words pressed down on me harder than the sun. She was toying with me, and I was letting her. We moved again, past the vendors, past families packing up their beach chairs. Every few steps she'd toss out little traps, casual as breathing. "You hear that dog barking?" she asked, pointing toward a golden retriever chasing a frisbee. "Yeah," I mumbled, nodding. "You're quick," she said after I sidestepped a sandcastle without missing a beat. "Must be all that practice." I forced a laugh. "Yeah, muscle memory." Her smirk told me she didn't buy it. Not for a second. And yet, she didn't call security. She didn't walk away. She kept leading, and I kept following, caught in her gravity. The crowd thinned as we reached the quieter end of the boardwalk. A stone bench sat beneath a cluster of palms, overlooking the water. The sun was low now, streaking the sky orange and pink, the waves burning with color as they rolled in. She sat, folding the towel neatly over her lap, and gestured for me to join her. I hesitated, then lowered myself onto the bench. The stick rested against my leg like a useless confession. The sunglasses felt heavier than ever. She leaned back, eyes on the horizon. For the first time since she'd stopped me, she didn't speak. She just let the silence stretch, thick and uneasy. The air smelled of salt and coconut oil, the wind cooling against my damp skin. My flip-flops dug into the sand. My chest rose and fell, too fast. Finally, I broke. "You're not buying this, are you?" She turned her head slowly, her gaze meeting mine through the shades. "Not for a second," she said softly. "But I'm curious. Why keep it up? Why not just walk away?" I let out a laugh, real this time, raw, almost desperate. "Honestly? I don't know. Maybe because you're not letting me." She smiled, faint but real. "You're not wrong." Then she said it, her voice low, certain, and heavier than anything else she'd told me that day. "People who are really blind see more than you think." The words hung there, suspended in the glow of the sunset, heavier than the stick against my leg, heavier than the shame crawling through me. And I realized then, I wasn't just caught. I was seen. The sky was sliding into twilight, streaks of orange giving way to purples that bled into the ocean. The crowd thinned as families hauled coolers back to their cars, kids whining with exhaustion, radios shutting down one by one. But I stayed on that bench beside her, sunglasses digging into my nose, stick leaning against my knee like a guilty verdict. She hadn't moved since she'd said it. People who are really blind see more than you think. Her words pressed into me heavier than the humid air. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "You're not going to let me off easy, are you?" Her head tilted just slightly, that half-smile tugging at her lips. "Why should I?" I laughed weakly, dragging a hand through my hair. "Most people would have yelled. Or called security. Or just walked away. Most people don't waste their time," she said, eyes still on the horizon. "But me? I like to know what I'm looking at." I swallowed, the weight of her attention grounding me. "And what do you see?" She finally turned, pinning me with those sharp eyes. "A kid," she said plainly. One who thinks he's clever. One who thinks a joke stops being cruel if you call it a prank. The words hit harder than I expected. Maybe because she wasn't wrong. I looked down, twisting the driftwood stick in my hands like I could carve a better version of myself into it. Yeah, I muttered. I guess that's me. Her expression softened, almost imperceptibly. She leaned back on the bench, towel folded neatly across her lap. But you're still here, she said quietly. That counts for something. I frowned, glancing at her. Here as in what? Sitting next to you while you roast me. She smirked. Here as in not running off the second I called your bluff. Most guys would have bolted. You didn't. I let out a dry laugh. Trust me, I thought about it. But you didn't, she pressed. Why? Her question hung in the air, heavier than the waves crashing against the shore. I tried to find an answer, something honest, something that didn't sound pathetic. Finally, I shrugged, forcing a smile that felt more like surrender. Because, I don't know. Maybe you don't scare me as much as you should. Her eyes lingered on mine, searching, measuring. Then, unexpectedly, she laughed. Not the sharp, cutting laugh from earlier. A real one. Warm. Short. It hit me harder than any insult. She stood, brushing sand off her towel, her voice steady as ever. Come on. I blinked up at her. Come on where? Back to where this started. She nodded toward the changing stalls in the distance, their wooden slats darkening in the fading light. Let's see what you've learned. Something twisted in my chest, equal parts dread and curiosity. You're serious? Her smirk was back, sly and unrelenting. Dead serious. And then she started walking, her sandals flicking sand behind her. For a second, I just sat there, staring at the useless stick in my lap, the sunset bleeding across the water. I could have stayed. I could have gone back to my friends, let them tear me apart with jokes, drink cheap beer until the night swallowed the day. But I didn't. I stood, slid the sunglasses back into place, and followed. The crowd was thin now, shadows stretching long across the sand. The air cooled with the promise of night. My friend's laughter was a faint echo down by the nets, but I tuned it out. She led me back to the stalls, her pace unhurried, deliberate. The place that had started as a joke now loomed like a stage I hadn't been ready to step on. She stopped just a few feet away, turning to face me. All right, Evan, she said, her voice low, steady. This is where you thought the game was. So tell me, what was it really about? I swallowed, throat dry. What do you mean? Her arms crossed, her eyes catching the last of the light. You didn't come here to spy. Not really. So why? The stick felt heavier than ever in my hands. My voice came out softer than I meant. Maybe I just wanted to see what I'd look like if I wasn't me. Her gaze didn't waver. She let the silence stretch, waves crashing behind us, the smell of salt and fried food lingering in the air. Then she said, almost gently, You don't need to fake blindness to see yourself, Evan. You just need to stop hiding. The words hit harder than anything my friends had ever told me. Harder than any joke or jab or shove. Because they were true. I lowered the stick into the sand. It sank halfway, leaning like a broken flag. And for the first time all day, I didn't feel like laughing. The stick stood there, half buried in the sand, as if it belonged more to the beach than to me. I stared at it, the weight of her words pressing down heavier than the humid air, heavier than the eyes I could still feel on me from my friends back by the nets. She didn't move. She just watched me. Arms crossed, towel hanging loose now, her face caught between the last streaks of daylight and the creeping shadows of night. You know, she said finally, her voice low but even, lying's easy. That's why everyone does it. But sticking around after you've been caught, that's rare. Her words settled in me like a stone dropped into water, rippling out in ways I didn't expect. I rubbed the back of my neck, forcing a laugh that sounded emptier than I wanted. Yeah, well, maybe I'm just too stupid to run. Her lips curved, just slightly, almost hidden. Or maybe you wanted to see what it felt like to be seen. That landed harder than anything else she'd said. Because she was right, and she knew it. The crowd around us thinned to almost nothing now. Families gone, the music fading into a few scattered speakers. The pier lights blinked on one by one, casting long glowing lines across the darkening water. She shifted the towel on her shoulder, tilting her head. So what happens now, Evan? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? You've dropped the act, she said simply. So what do you do with it? Go back to your friends and laugh it off. Pretend this never happened? I looked toward the volleyball nets where Chris and the others were still gathered, faint outlines against the glow of the boardwalk. They were waiting for me to return, to spin this into a story. Maybe even a victory. But when I looked back at her, something in me shifted. I don't know, I admitted quietly. I thought this was supposed to be funny. But standing here now, I trailed off, shaking my head. It just feels small. For the first time, she softened. Really softened. The sharp edges in her expression dulled, her arms uncrossed, and she let out a breath like she'd been holding it as long as I had. You're young, she said finally. You've got time to figure out what's worth laughing at. The words weren't a lecture. They weren't even advice. They There was something gentler, like a truth she'd learned the hard way, one she was giving me without asking anything in return. I wanted to ask her name. I wanted to ask why she hadn't just walked away the moment she caught me, why she'd dragged me along like some experiment. But before I could, she shifted the towel higher and started walking toward the pier. I stood there for a second, the sound of waves filling the silence she left behind. My chest felt tight, not from shame anymore, but from something else. Something harder to name. "Wait," I called out. My voice was louder than I meant, raw, like it carried more than the word itself. But she didn't turn. She kept walking, her figure folding into the thinning crowd near the boardwalk, until she was just another silhouette swallowed by the pier lights. I pulled the sunglasses off and let them hang loosely from my fingers. The air was cooler now, the breeze sharp against my skin. I glanced at the stick, leaning crooked in the sand, and left it there. By the time I got back to the nets, Chris was already grinning like a wolf. "Yo, Evan, what the hell happened, man?" We were rolling the whole time. The others erupted in laughter, slapping me on the back, waiting for me to join in. I didn't. I just dropped the sunglasses into the cooler and grabbed a soda, the can hissing as it cracked open. "Got busted," I said flatly. They booed, groaned, cursed, egging me to tell the story. But I just shook my head. I looked past them, past the nets, out at the waves darkening under the twilight. My chest tightened with the echo of her words. People who are really blind see more than you think. And I knew right then, I'd come to the beach for a laugh, but I was leaving with something else. Something I couldn't quite name yet. Something that wasn't funny at all. The night folded over the beach in slow waves, the sky deepening into a heavy navy blue. The last orange streaks on the horizon gave way to the scattered glow of boardwalk lights, neon signs buzzing faintly, the smell of fried food mixing with salt air. My friends were still loud, still riding the high of the day, cracking jokes that bounced off the sand and disappeared into the hum of the ocean. But their laughter felt distant, muffled, like it belonged to another place I wasn't part of anymore. I sat back on the towel, soda warm in my hand, the carbonation flat on my tongue. Chris leaned over, still grinning, phone unlocked and ready. "Dude, you should have seen your face when she cornered you. Oscar-worthy. I'm clipping it tonight." I gave him a half smile, but it didn't reach my eyes. "Yeah, hilarious." He didn't notice. None of them did. They were too busy replaying the moment, piling on jokes, already turning the day into a story that would grow bigger each time it was told. In their version, I'd be the fool, the punchline, the guy who got owned by some random woman on the beach. But that wasn't the story I carried. I leaned back, watching the pier lights blur against the dark water. Her face came back to me, sharp and steady, her words circling like gulls that wouldn't leave me alone. "You don't need to fake blindness to see yourself. You just need to stop hiding." I didn't even know her name, but she felt more real in that half hour than anyone else had in months. Chris shoved my shoulder, snapping me out of it. "Evan, come on, man. Don't pout. You'll laugh about it tomorrow." "Yeah," I said quietly, not bothering to argue. "Tomorrow." But I knew I wouldn't. The night stretched on. We drank cheap beer from plastic cups, tried to flirt with girls who passed us by, stumbled back to the Airbnb sticky with sweat and salt. The others crashed almost immediately, their snores filling the cramped apartment. I couldn't sleep. I sat out on the tiny balcony, the sound of waves crashing faint in the distance, the night air cooler against my skin. The stick was still on the beach, half buried in sand. I kept seeing it there, crooked and useless, like it was waiting for me to admit something I wasn't ready to. I thought about her stride, the way she dropped that bottle like it was nothing, the way she looked at me when I stepped clean over it. I thought about her voice, sharp when she caught me, soft when she told me people who are blind see more than you think. It wasn't attraction. Or maybe it was, but not in the way my friends would have teased me about. It was something else, something heavier. Like she'd peeled back a layer I hadn't realized was there and forced me to look. For the first time in a long time, I didn't want to laugh. I wanted to sit with the silence, with the way her words felt truer than anything my friends and I had thrown around all summer. The next morning, the beach was already alive when we dragged ourselves back down with bloodshot eyes and hangovers. Chris was still buzzing, bragging about how many views the clip had in our group chat. I barely heard him. I scanned the shoreline, the nets, the stalls, the pier, the runners pounding through the sand. But not her. She was gone. I stood there, the sun already hot on my shoulders, the gulls screaming overhead, and felt a strange ache settle into me. I didn't know if it was regret, or shame, or something else. But it stayed with me. Stayed even after we packed the car. Stayed as the highway pulled us back inland, the ocean shrinking in the rearview mirror. Stayed long after the clip stopped being funny to anyone but my friends. I didn't know if I'd ever see her again. Maybe she was just a runner, a stranger passing through. But her voice didn't leave me. Her words didn't leave me. And maybe that was the point. Sometimes the people who see you most are the ones you never get to see again. The drive home was loud. Music blaring, windows down, my friends screaming out the lyrics and laughing at inside jokes. But inside my head, it was quiet. I stared out at the blur of pine trees lining the Carolina highway, my arm hot from the sun beating through the glass. Every so often, Chris would nudge me, trying to get me to join in on some story, but I barely heard him. All I could hear was her voice. You just need to stop hiding. I kept replaying the look on her face when she said it. Not angry. Not smug. Just steady, like she knew I'd understand later, even if I didn't then. We stopped halfway for greasy burgers and sodas. The guys shoved each other in the booths, teasing me, making jokes about Evan's new girlfriend on the beach. I laughed along just enough to keep them from noticing, but it was hollow. My mind was still back in the sand, with the crooked stick I'd left behind. When I got home that night, the house was dark. My parents were asleep. I dropped my bag in the hallway and collapsed onto my bed, staring at the ceiling. The hum of the ceiling fan was the only sound. That's when it really hit me. The prank, the laughter, the whole stupid setup, it wasn't funny anymore. Not even a little. It felt empty, cheap, like a plastic toy you thought would be fun but broke the second you touched it. But her, she stayed. Her stride, her sharp eyes, the way she never flinched, never let me slip away. The way she forced me to stand still long enough to feel the weight of my own choices. She didn't just catch me. She held up a mirror. And I hated what I saw. Not because she'd humiliated me, but because she was right. I was hiding. Behind jokes. Behind my friends. Behind the easy laugh that always let me off the hook. And maybe I'd been doing that for a long time. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee I didn't really want. My mom asked how the trip was. I told her it was fine. Just fine. She smiled, not knowing anything had changed. But I felt it. That night on the balcony, I told myself maybe it was just the ocean, the salt air, the haze of too much beer making her words heavier than they were. But no, they were still with me now, stronger even. People who are really blind see more than you think. It wasn't about vision. It wasn't about eyes. It was about me. About the way I'd been stumbling through life, not seeing what mattered, not facing myself. And for the first time, I wondered what it would feel like to stop. Not just the prank. Not just the act. But the whole thing, the hiding, the running, the pretending everything was a joke. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know if I even could. But I knew this much. I'd gone to the beach looking for a laugh. What I found instead was someone who saw right through me. And even though she walked away without telling me her name, she left me with something I hadn't had in a long time. A reason to want to change. Weeks slipped by, but she didn't leave me. Not really. She lingered in flashes. In the mirror when I caught myself faking a smile. In the pauses when my friends made a joke at someone else's expense. In the empty space after laughter died and silence pressed in. I'd scroll through my phone at night, thumb hovering over Chris's video, the one that had already racked up comments in our group chat. Everyone thought it was gold. Me fumbling with the stick, her staring me down, the moment I stumbled over my words. They replayed it like it was some highlight reel. But I couldn't watch it. Not once. Because the camera didn't catch what mattered. It didn't catch the way she looked at me, not angry, not mocking, just steady. It didn't catch the way her words settled into my chest and refused to leave. One Friday night, Chris threw a party. The house was packed, music thudding through the walls, red cups spilling across counters. I was leaning against the kitchen sink, watching everyone shout over each other, when a girl from one of my classes came up and laughed. "Hey, you're the blind guy, right? That video's hilarious." I froze. My drink tasted sour all of a sudden. "Yeah," I said quietly, forcing a smile. "Hilarious." She drifted off, and I felt something crack inside me. Because in her laugh, I heard the difference. To me, it had been a dumb prank that spun out of control. To her, and probably everyone else, it was just a joke. A punchline. A label. And that's when I realized what the woman on the beach had given me. Not shame. Not humiliation. But the gift of seeing it before it stuck. Before that became all I was. I slipped out of the party, the cool night hitting me as I walked down the street alone. My phone buzzed with messages from the guys, but I shoved it in my pocket and let the silence wrap around me. I thought about her again. The way she carried herself, the way she tested me with every step, the way she told me people who are really blind see more than you think. She hadn't embarrassed me. She'd woken me up. For the first time in years, I wanted more than just a laugh. I wanted to stand for something that wouldn't collapse under the weight of a stranger's eyes. I didn't know where she was now, or if I'd ever see her again. But I knew this. She'd left me with a thread, and I was either going to pull it or keep pretending it wasn't there. The next morning, when my friends texted about another dumb bet, I typed and deleted a dozen replies before finally sending just 2 words. "I'm out." Their responses came fast, jokes, question marks, Chris calling me soft. But for once, I didn't feel the need to explain myself. Because I'd already explained it to the only person who mattered. The woman with the sharp eyes on the beach. Even if she never knew it. Even if she was just a runner who happened to pass through my life for half an hour. She'd seen me, and that was enough to start seeing myself. Summer slipped into fall, and the days grew shorter. Classes picked up again, routines fell back into place, and everyone around me seemed to move on like the beach trip was just another blur in the long string of weekends. But I couldn't. Not really. I started noticing things I used to ignore. The way my friends laughed too loud when they didn't mean it. The way I laughed too, out of habit, even when nothing was funny. The way I used to jump in just to keep from feeling left out. Now every time I tried, I heard her voice in my head. Stop hiding. I began pulling away, slowly at first. Saying no when Chris pitched another scheme. Leaving the group chat muted. Spending more time by myself, more time just sitting with the silence. It felt strange at first, like walking without music in your ears, like hearing your own footsteps for the first time. One evening, I went running. I wasn't a runner, not really, but something about pounding the pavement, feeling my lungs burn, felt closer to her than anything else had since that day. I imagined her stride, the way she moved with purpose, as if she owned every step she took. I wasn't graceful, not even close, but it felt like chasing something real. Sometimes, late at night, I'd catch myself wondering who she was when she wasn't calling out idiots on the beach. Did she live there? Did she run every morning along that same stretch of sand? Did she even remember me? I doubted it. To her, I was probably just another kid caught in a dumb act. A story she might have told a friend over coffee. You won't believe what I saw some boys doing today. And that was it. Forgotten. But to me, she wasn't forgettable. She'd left something behind in me. A voice I couldn't shake. A mirror I couldn't put down. And maybe that was the point. One weekend months later, I drove back to the coast by myself. Not Myrtle Beach exactly, but close. The air smelled the same, salt and sunscreen, fried food from the boardwalk. Kids ran through the surf, gulls shrieked overhead, music clashed from different speakers. It was the same chaos as before, but I wasn't the same. I walked down the shoreline, letting the waves curl around my ankles. I watched people, families, couples, groups of friends, and for once, I didn't feel the need to perform. I didn't need a joke. I didn't need a role. I just needed to be there. The sun dipped lower, the sky bleeding into gold and pink. I found a bench near the boardwalk, sat down, and let the sound of the waves fill the silence. For a moment, I thought about her again. Her laugh, sharp and knowing. The weight of her words. The way she walked away without looking back. And then, almost without realizing it, I smiled. Because I understood something I hadn't that day on the beach. She didn't stay to humiliate me. She stayed long enough to give me a choice. And walking away, she gave me the chance to decide what kind of person I wanted to be when nobody was watching. I leaned back, the wind cool against my skin, and closed my eyes. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like hiding. And that was enough. Winter came. The kind of cold that sharpened the air and drove people indoors, the kind of silence that made every sound echo louder. My friends were still the same, louder, drunker, chasing jokes like they were lifelines. But I wasn't. Not anymore. We still hung out sometimes. Old habits don't break clean. But I felt the distance now, like I was standing on a shoreline watching them swim further out, laughing, not realizing the tide was pulling them. Every time Chris slapped me on the back and said, "Come on, Evan, where's the old you?" I felt the answer rise in my chest, gone. I didn't say it out loud. Not yet. But I knew it. Instead, I filled the space with new things. I kept running. At first a mile, then two, then more. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but the rhythm of it gave me clarity. It made me feel closer to her, even though she was just a memory. One night after a long run, I sat on the curb outside my apartment, sweat cooling on my skin, steam rising from the pavement. My chest was heaving, but my head was clear, clearer than it had been in years. And I thought about her again, the jogger on the beach, the woman with the sharp eyes and the towel over her shoulder. She hadn't told me much. She hadn't needed to. Just a handful of words that landed harder than anything else had. People who are really blind see more than you think. And in that moment, I finally understood what she meant. It wasn't about sight. It wasn't about pretending to be blind. It was about awareness. About how easy it is to move through life without really seeing yourself, your choices, the way you hurt people, the way you waste time hiding behind laughter. She'd seen me. All of me. And instead of walking away with disgust, she'd stood there long enough for me to see myself too. Months had passed, but it still felt like yesterday. And I knew now, it wasn't an accident that she stopped me. Sometimes the universe sends you someone for half an hour. Not to stay. Not to love. Just to change you. I leaned back on my hands, the cool night sky stretching wide above me, stars blurred by city lights. And I let the thought settle in. Maybe I'd never see her again. Maybe I wasn't supposed to. Because she'd already given me what I needed. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking for the next laugh. I was looking forward. The old me was still there, buried under jokes and half-truths. But the new me, the one she pulled out into the light, was finally learning how to stay. And in the quiet, under the winter sky, I whispered it to myself like a promise. No more hiding. Spring bled back into summer before I noticed. Trees thickened, sidewalks shimmered at noon, and the night stretched later until it felt like the sky was trying to remember how to be dark. I kept running. Not because I was good at it, but because every ragged mile felt like sanding down a rough edge I'd left untouched for too long. One afternoon, Chris texted, "Myrtle? Same crew. One last blast." I stared at the message a while. The old me would have fired back a string of flame emojis and a yes before thinking. The new me let the question breathe. I typed OK and hit send, not because I wanted another weekend of noise, but because I needed to go back to where I'd left a piece of myself in the sand. We drove down in a heat that made the highway haze. Same playlists, same jokes, same energy like a lighter being flicked over and over even when the flame wasn't catching. When the ocean finally cracked open in front of us, the air tasted like salt and old memories. The beach was crowded, the boards hot, the gulls loud. It could have been the same day as before if not for the way my chest felt different. Calmer. I set my towel by the nets and watched the current carry foam along the shoreline like a lazy conveyor belt. Somewhere a stereo coughed out a reggae bass line. Somewhere oil popped on a grill. It was all there unchanged. I was the only thing that didn't match. "Got a new plan," Chris said, eyes bright with a bad idea. He nudged my shoulder. "Nothing illegal. Just stupid enough to be funny." I smiled without my teeth. "I'm out, man." He groaned like I'd failed a test. "Since when are you the hall monitor?" "Since I got tired of pretending." He blinked, thrown by the simplicity of it, and tried to pivot. "Fine, philosopher. You do you. We'll make our own fun." He wandered off with the others, phones already in hand, hunting for the next laugh like it owned them. I walked alone toward the boardwalk, toward the place where the wooden stalls sat with their peeling paint and dark doorways. The tide hissed in and out, indifferent. I half expected to see the stick I'd left last time, crooked and stubborn, but of course it was gone. Sand swallows what you don't carry. Near the stalls, a woman rinsed the day off her feet at a spigot. Another shepherded two kids, braided their hair with quick hands. A runner flew past, ponytail slicing the air clean. For a second my heart jumped, then settled. Not her. Just a runner like 100 others. I stood there anyway, not to lurk, not to angle myself in some dumb position, but to listen, to the water striking wood, to a child insisting she wasn't tired, to my own breath evening out. It felt like stepping into an old photograph and noticing, finally, what had always been in the corners. "Yo," a voice said to my left. A lifeguard in a red shirt, whistle catching light. "Marcus." He squinted, then snapped his fingers. "You're Evan, right? You were with." He gestured vaguely toward the world of guys and nets and noise. "Yeah," I said. I was a mess back then." He studied me, not unkind. "You look less messy now." "I'm working on it." He nodded like that was the only honest answer there is. Then he tipped his chin toward the water. "Hey, we're short a pair of hands for an accessibility swim hour down the beach. Folks with vision loss come in early evening when it's calmer. You free?" The question hung there like something the ocean had brought me on purpose. I didn't hesitate. "Yeah," I said. "I'm free." We walked a quarter mile to a quieter cove. A sign I'd never noticed before fluttered on a stake. Community swim, all abilities welcome. Volunteers hauled out extra noodles and bright, floating markers. A woman with a white cane laughed at something I didn't hear, her joy ringing truer than any speaker on the pier. I held a marker line, while a little boy in green goggles practiced pushing off. His dad called counts from the shore. The boy's hands found the rope every time. He grinned wide enough to swallow the sun. An older man with clouded eyes eased into the shallows, gripping my forearm when a wave nudged his knees. "Talk me through it," he said. I did, where the sand dipped, how the water lifted and set, the exact second the foam tickled his calves. We moved slow. He let go. He stood there, chest out, listening like the ocean was a song he knew by heart and had finally been invited to hum along to. Nobody asked me why I was there. Nobody cared. That felt like grace. The light softened to honey as the hour wound down. People climbed the beach with towels around their shoulders, voices low and content. I returned the markers, rinsed salt off my hands, and looked back at the line we'd made in the water. It was simple, bright, impossible to miss. When I turned, she was there. Not 5 feet away, hair pulled back, towel slung over one shoulder. Same steady posture. Same eyes that didn't miss much. She wasn't jogging this time. She was just standing, like she'd been here all along, and I'd only now stepped into the same frame. We didn't say anything at first. The crowd thinned around us. A gull shrieked. Somewhere, a steel drum band stumbled into a chorus and found it. Finally, she smiled, not sharp, not testing. Real. "Selective vision," she said, repeating words she'd tossed at me months ago, only softer now. "Looks like it improved." A laugh slipped out of me unguarded. I had a good teacher. I wasn't your teacher, she said. You were just ready to learn. We stood there with the water working at the shore like a patient machine. I told her about the stick I'd left, about the balcony night when the jokes felt thin, about running to hear my own footsteps, about saying no without explaining. She listened without interrupting, the way some people watch the horizon when they know the tide's about to turn. When I finished, she nodded once, like a metronome tapping the top of a measure. You don't need me, she said. You never did. I needed someone to stop me, I admitted. I needed somebody to look at me and not look away. Her eyes flicked toward the cove where the last of the volunteers packed gear into a plastic bin. People do that for each other every day, she said. You're doing it right now. I followed her gaze. The man with the clouded eyes waved. The boy in green goggles dragged a noodle like a trophy. The sign rattled softly in the breeze. I turned back to thank her, to ask her name, to anchor this to something I could keep. But she'd already shifted her towel, already angled her body toward the boardwalk. Not leaving in a rush. Just moving on, the way runners do when the light is right and the miles are calling. Hey, I said. She paused. People who are really blind, I said, the words warm in my mouth now, not sharp. They see more than you think. She looked at me like a mirror, tilted to catch the sky. Finally, she said softly. You're looking. And then she walked, not fast, not slow, just hers. No dramatic turn, no last knowing glance. The pier lights flickered on in the deepening blue, and for a moment she was a silhouette threaded through them, and then the crowd folded her up. I felt no panic, no ache. Just that clean, quiet air that comes right after a storm chooses to pass. By the time I got back to the nets, the guys were mid-argument about where to eat. Chris opened his mouth to toss me into the joke, but I beat him to it. Helped with a swim hour, I said simply. You should try it. He blinked, confused, then scoffed, then let it go. The tide keeps its own time with some people. We ate. We walked the pier. The night pressed cool against sunburnt skin. And when I finally stood alone at the rail, the ocean breathing steady below, I realized the thing I'd wanted to say from the beginning and had only now earned the right to say. I hadn't been pretending to be blind that day. I'd been practicing it. I took the sunglasses from my pocket, old, bent, cheap, and set them on the rail. The wind lifted them once like a question and then carried them away. The horizon was just darkness and quiet, the kind you step into when you've decided to stop hiding. I could hear the water touch the pylons. I could feel the boards hum under my feet. I could see enough to know where I was going. And for the first time, it felt like I wasn't looking for a laugh, or an exit, or approval from faces that would forget me by morning. For the first time, I just looked. And I stayed.